I'm glad you switched out those faces there, Clark. That's really good.
What are you talking about, Rob? It's a beautiful representation.
I think it's awesome. I've got a shot of you I'm going to put up here in just a few minutes, but they said they started the recording already, so I'm a little worried.
Yeah, probably should be careful. Probably should be careful.
Awesome. I think I need a copy of that.
I can provide that, Stacy.
Oh my gosh, that background is the best. That is just too awesome.
Clark's good. Let's face it.
We needed to bring some extra life. If we weren't bringing on a moratorium, I just felt like we needed something else.
That's pretty good. I'm going to turn off my camera so I don't have to eat my dinner in front of you, though.
You better chew quietly or else put it on mute also.
Done.
Okay, I have 6:40. I'm going to just for purposes of that I can see everybody and everybody's on. I'm just going to ask for the council members to just or the board members, I guess, of the building authority. Board member Christiansen.
Here.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have good established technology. Board member Shelton.
Here.
Board member Barnes.
Here,
Board member
just barely.
Carol.
Here.
All right, we can barely hear you, but we can hear you.
Can you
So
hear me
you go.
now?
Yes, now I can hear you very well.
Okay, I guess
Board
I just need to
member-
be a little closer.
Board member Taylor.
Here.
Okay. Thank you for being here. We are met as a local building authority of American Fork City. It is May 12th of the year 2020. This meeting is being held electronically, and we will follow the agenda as outlined. I have conducted the roll call. I'm going to do it again just as a matter of formality. I should have maybe looked down and seen this. So board member Christiansen.
Here.
Board member Shelton.
Here.
Board member Barnes.
Here,
Board member Carroll.
Here.
And board member Taylor.
Here.
Okay. Item number 2 on the agenda is presentation and adoption of the local building authority, American Forks City's tentative budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Looks like we have that on our screen. Is there any questions about this tentative budget? As we've noted in the past, it's mostly just for electronic notification of meetings and things like that. So okay, so do I have a motion to adopt this tentative budget?
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion by board member Taylor,
I'll second.
second by board member Shelton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Board member Christiansen,
Okay.
Aye.
board member Shelton,
Aye.
board member Barnes,
aye.
board member Carroll,
Aye.
board member Taylor.
Aye.
All right. Item number 3 is a review and action on approval of the January 14th, 2020 annual meeting minutes. Any changes to the minutes, Terlyn?
No, there were not.
Okay, I would entertain a motion for these lengthy minutes.
I'll make that motion for approval.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Shelton,
second,
second by Board Member Christiansen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Board Member Christiansen,
aye,
Board Member Shelton,
Aye.
Board Member Barnes,
Aye.
Board Member Carroll,
Aye.
Board Member Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 4, old business. Is there any old business that this board feels needs to come before all of us tonight? Okay. Item number 5 is any new business. I have no new business to come before the board authority tonight. Is there any others in the board that would like to discuss anything upcoming? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved,
So
President.
Adjourn.
I have a motion by Councilman or Board Member Shelton,
second,
second by Board Member Christiansen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. I have 6:45 and we're going to just kind of move forward right now with American Fork City Redevelopment Agency. Again, this is May 12th of the year 2020. We are met as a redevelopment agency. We've sent notices out into various locations throughout the city. And we appreciate all those who are in attendance, staff, and we would note that our consultant Jason Birmingham is with us here tonight as well. I will start with a roll call. Board Member Christiansen,
here,
Board Member Shelton,
Here.
Board Member Barnes,
Here.
Board Member Carroll,
Here.
and Board Member Taylor.
Here.
Okay. Item number 2, presentation and acceptance of the RDA tentative budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th of the year 2021. I'm going to look to Jason, if you would, as our consultant. I would like to just kind of state up front that of some direction that the mayor's office has given Jason, and that is that with all the moving targets down there, I'm not talking of the current climate of the economy, although that it does have a bearing on that. I did have a talk with one of the major developers in that area, and he is holding off. It's an action item that we had earlier in the month with 860 North, but with all it's just a very fluid area right now with development. And I asked them to make sure that we keep a very fluid budget. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Jason to kind of give us kind of an intro into this budget.
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Sure you can hear me well. Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that, Mayor, or I will call him the RDA Board Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me just a couple of minutes this evening. We do have a few RDAs, as you are aware, and I think our budgets that are reflected that you can see on the screen include the Downtown Redevelopment Fund. So that's our RDA in the downtown area. And then I believe we'll also be talking about the Egg Farm EDA, which is an economic development area. And I haven't seen all the slides, but I'm happy to walk you through different places here. One thing I will note, that we have focused on recently has been the capital facilities finance plan relative to the RDA. It is broader, but it also includes specifically the egg farm. So I think one of the things we wanted to briefly discuss tonight is just a review of the projects that we had included in our amended project area budget back a number of years ago when we went to the taxing entity committee and were successful to get a few things changed so that we could continue to receive tax increment. On one note, we've had a lot more growth there than we had anticipated from that original amended budget. So the good news of that is we are actually accelerating the payment and paying a lot less in interest costs to the developer who installed initial improvements in the area and had a reimbursement agreement. And so although we have until, I think it's 2027, we've been able to shorten that, and we anticipate that that obligation will actually be paid off next year in your fiscal 2021 year. And then there's a remaining few years of which there will be revenues now to look at the other project priorities that have been identified. And I think we're going to review that here in just a little bit. Any questions specifically, I guess, on the downtown redevelopment area? I don't know, David, if you wanted to provide a little more overview on that specifically of, obviously not a lot of, revenue per se that is coming in. There's a few technical and professional expenses that we have in that category. So I don't know if you want to comment specifically on those.
Yes, we did have some professional help this year. You can see the expenditures there, the 41,000. That's for the reports that we received this year regarding the downtown redevelopment plan. That is not all the way finished. The plan still is forthcoming, but our anticipation is that would be done by the end of this fiscal year. We do not show any additional professional technical reports for next year. That would be, if the council wants to see additional reports, we can visit about that. But right now in the budget, we do not show a continuation of that.
So maybe I'll ask a question and then my understanding. So I think this is work that Randy Sant and others have provided for the downtown area. As you'll recall, we were pursuing and still, I think at some point pursuing we were calling it a Main Street, but maybe it's better titled as a downtown redevelopment area or a community reinvestment area. It doesn't currently exist necessarily within a project area, but I think the information that I've preliminarily reviewed that Randy has provided through his group, I think will be helpful to ultimately put together a project area plan and budget for that area. So I guess the one question might be, it doesn't look like we've got it contemplated next year, but I think there was some comments from other board members of the RDA that indicated that the Patriot Station was kind of the highest priority of the CRA, but that the Main Street is also an important project potentially for the city to consider. And I haven't heard anything recently, so I'm just asking, kind of where that stands. And I think with Randy's work, it's helpful. Doesn't need to be immediate, but I think his work helps us set the stage potentially for a tax increment area to be created.
I think I seem very quiet there. I think I can speak as, in my opinion, I think that the TOD has what felt like momentum, maybe does not have the momentum that we would like at this time, but I do think that it has a precedence over what we have prepared, the budget, the entire area, and we have critical mass down there, a very planned project with several moving parts. And so I don't think that currently that the other taxing entities, namely the major contributor being the district, has a real appetite for multiple CRAs at this time. And so I would like to think that we would stay with the one that we have and maybe define it, negotiate with them, and look at what we can't do. And I do think it might take a few months to have it come to fruition, but I'm hopeful that it's still on the table based upon just the environment with COVID and even a political environment that they're under. So that's just my take on that. I'm open to others.
Well, that's helpful. I would add that it doesn't necessarily just have to be tax increment based. You know, we are in an opportunity zone. We're
Yep.
starting to see a little more capitalization, I should say, capital form that is starting to invest in these types of projects. I think we're still behind from a traditional project, which is you really have bricks and sticks that are ready to go vertical, and you've got a few developments that are to that stage. I'm not sure where that is, but I think the opportunity zone could be something that could cultivate this and not necessarily have to use tax increment, but designating, maybe some other tools to use in conjunction with the opportunity zone might be something that you want to consider. If not, really soon, I would say in the next year or two. I think that's still something that needs to be pursued. So.
Can I ask you, Jason, when you say it doesn't have to be tax increment, are we talking then a different tool than a CRA?
Well, there's a few other tools. The TRZ, as you know, we
Sure.
contemplated as a overlay potentially in Patriot Station. But I think that also could have some impact on, where you have an opportunity zone and where you have a downtown. We could certainly contemplate TRZ and potentially the broadening of the idea of transportation and some of the other elements that would come into that, I think could qualify for TRZ, which then would bring state level incremental revenue into it, not just local tax increment. Because I don't disagree. I think what Mayor Frost has indicated, I guess the temperature, if you wanted to call it taking a temperature of where the taxing entities are on multiple CRA projects, I would say that Alpine School District in particular, but that doesn't mean that others aren't similarly feeling that way. But my experience has been Alpine School District has approved very few. They've been limited projects that they have participated in. And, I think their timing of when they would maybe consider something may not be ideal of when you need to, to do something. But we're seeing more and more interest, I think, from state partners, whether that's UDOT, whether it's the state, whether it's, even a transit authority or something like that. There might be some opportunities to do, some transportation oriented things that might even include multimodal, where you've got biking trails, pedestrian access, things like that, which I think is pretty much designed in your downtown area. So that's what I was referring to, as well as the opportunity zone that, provides for deferral of capital gains and real benefits on depreciation, appreciation components.
Well, the reason I say, as I'm listening to you talk and Mayor Frost, I agree. I still think our top priority is getting funds for the TOD area. But I would love to see something happen in downtown. And we still haven't seen the report from Advisors Consulting Services, hoping that we can see maybe a more comprehensive vision of what we could do and the different pieces that would fall into place. I'm not ready to drop it as a project completely. I don't know if an RDA or a CRA is the right tool even, but something to do down there would be great.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, I know Advisors Consulting is getting close. Received a text from Josh Walker. They were waiting on some key information just to finalize the report, so that is coming. I think after we get that report and we analyze what that means for us, we can always amend this budget. If the council decides that they want to add another piece to that, or even take another step, we can always revise this budget and try and get something going. But that report is getting very close.
I think just the 2 cents that I have, I feel like we've got to somehow know where the decision points lie. We've been working on both of these, were started at the same time. And, one did take a priority and a precedence over the other, but I feel like we've got to make a decision somewhere on both of them. How do we get that to a vote or to a decision? We've been saying we're going to take this to the district almost for 2 years now with the TOD out there. And so for me, it just, the other project hurts the longer we delay the one, but you want to be strategic and a good working partner with the school district. But at the same time, I almost wonder if we're just putting off the inevitable. One of their big criteria is not to do residential projects, which one of these is very heavily based in that area. So I'd almost rather kind of know where we're at versus kind of playing this waiting game. So I don't know the right answer to that, but that's just kind of where my feelings are right now. I'd love to see us actually take one to them and say, here you go. I don't know what more we can do on the TOD down there. There's been a lot of work on that. And if they don't take it, then we've got another project waiting in the wings, and hopefully they will approve them or not approve them based upon their merits and not the number of projects that we're bringing to them. So that's just my
Just
feedback.
as a clarification, we did take the TOD one to the school district.
I'm talking a vote, like you're actually taking it to the body that votes, that presents it to them, get it on an agenda, get that done. I don't think
Okay,
we've done that.
okay. I was under the impression that had happened, but it wasn't on an agenda. It was done in a private, closed session.
Oh, I didn't know they could do a closed session for it. So I'm not privy to that information, but if it did, I'd love to know what the details of that were, but yeah, how we get it in front of the board to make that decision would be great.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say that there's a real residential component to the downtown as well. That's one of the, I think it's one of the key components, at least a mixed use of some sort, to make it viable. Yeah, so.
Well, I think that's going to come out in the report we finally get from them,
Yeah,
right?
I
I
would
don't know if I've seen anything real concrete that's come back from them as far as what that mixed use would look like or what it might entail. So it'd be great to get that report. So I look forward to seeing that.
I thought it was good to hear that was coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just maybe add a couple of comments to all of yours. I think your observation on, is there support, from taxing entities to participate on these projects? And I think the best way I could describe what we've experienced is Alpine School District has been a more difficult school district to work with when it comes to tax increment financing. We're aware of the major successes, but they have been Eagle Mountain, so the Facebook project, so pretty notable job creation, opportunity / tax base. The other one is heavily retail, which really doesn't follow any of their criteria. That was the University Mall, of course, in Orem. And, there's been many, not just American Fork, Pleasant Grove, Lehigh, Linden have had, a few projects that they have taken it to the school district. and the school district has, I guess in a kind way said, not quite fitting our parameters. We're happy to consider it, but we're not quite there. And I don't know if that's kind of some of the same feedback we've received at Alpine School District. I know in their minds, they've got kind of a clear matrix of what types of projects they want to support, but they haven't always adhered exactly to those criteria. I would think the key really is whether or not transit-oriented development, smart growth, more density, and using better infrastructure ratios, cost to infrastructure ratios, that they can get their arms around it. I think there's a lot of education, even at a school board level, to help them see that single family residential development or urban sprawl, what we traditionally think of development, that it has cost more than it is provided in the past to many local governments, including school districts. And but for, commercial concentration and more density per acre with tax base, it's hard for them to, get the revenue stream that they need to provide for the costs. And they're slow to, I think, see that. I think they're still debating, whether vineyard, whether there's enough density that's making sense for them there. And so I think that's the bigger hurdle for Alpine School District is, do they really see merits in a TOD? And I think a lot of it's going to have to be education that we show them. Now we're working on a couple of elements because the county asked for the same thing. We've got some real good data points and case studies relative to the Farmington Station Park or the track station in South Jordan and the project in Draper, all of which went from basically nothing on the tax rolls because it was owned by UTA and tax exempt to hundreds of millions of dollars of tax base. And although they've supported some of that with infrastructure and so forth, they've had a great return. So we've been able to show where school districts, counties, cities have really benefited from TODs. I think it's going to take that type of dialogue, not just with Rob Smith and the superintendent, but board members, to help them see that, this can be a very positive thing for them. But I don't know that it's going to happen overnight. So, in terms of taking it to the school board, I think it's an incremental approach of getting them information, educating them, helping them to see that these are really, smart types of projects for them from an economic perspective. But I don't think those lights just turn on overnight. Unfortunately, I think, to be fair to us in this process, I wish I could say that everyone's a Canyon School District or a Granite School District or even Davis School District. They've done many of these and are very supportive of it. But Alpine just they're struggling with some of the metrics and what they believe to be important to the school district. So we're going to have to work as partners to really get them educated and get them comfortable with what we're proposing down there.
A good point. I'm glad you bring that up, Jason. I think that's maybe what I'm looking for, just personally on my side, is more, what does that plan look like, right? So let's put together, in lack of a better term, a lobbying plan or whatever that is. What role do each of us play in that lobbying plan, and how are we going to go after that? I think that would be something that would be helpful for me, because at least you can see we're working towards this, and it's a very proactive approach like you've talked about.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair, and I know David and myself and Anna and many of the staff have, and Mayor Frost as well. We've had continued coordinated dialogue about, some of these elements. So out of those discussions has come, well, they're not seeing the merit of a TOD. So how can we show them where other projects have really been successful that are true TODs? And we don't have many, but we have 2 or 3 that have really taken shape now and have significant tax base that is, you know, just from a perspective of what value per acre. Well, they're looking at some of these cases are, you know, went from, you know, under about 700, 800,000 per acre of total tax base to, in some of these projects, well over 10, $12 million of tax base. So, you know, we're trying to help with those types of case studies to say, from a school district board's perspective, you know, how can you not potentially participate when this is in your best interest, and it's in all of our best interest. But we're putting some of those together, and I think well said, Rob. We have to be strategic. I don't think we can. My feeling was initially, because of the great relationship that American Fork has with the school district, I thought it would be a little different. But what I'm finding is that it isn't different. They have the same concerns with your project that they have with other projects. I think they're telling us what those concerns are, and now we're trying to address them and get positive information back to them. So hopefully we're leading them to a yes, and not leading them to a just give us an answer so we'll go away. I really think we're shaping it for a yes and not for, you know, I'm optimistic, I guess. I've seen some changes in some of Rob Smith's thinking as it relates to transit-oriented development. It's been minor, but I've seen a tweak. So I feel like we're having an influence, but we still have to put a strategy together and keep moving forward on that strategy to get their participation. Likewise, you're well aware that we got a county commission that is kind of similarly kind of stuck in decision-making, you know, dynamics, politics and everything. You know, it's been very difficult to educate them, but I think we've made some progress there as well. So we spend a lot of time on Patriot Station, but I think it does react. To me, it does relate also to the downtown or the Main Street, because we're talking about similar visions of development. And to me, what those visions are is they're really mixed use. You know, the days, I think, are somewhat over of the large malls or large retail boxes. We're going to see more people living, working, and entertaining themselves within, you know, a smaller area. But it has to be connected with parking. It has to be connected with transit and transportation. And so I think we got the right visions. We got to be patient with our stakeholders and bring them forward, you know, bring them along. Anyway, but that's my 2 cents. Sorry to take up a lot of your time.
You're okay.
Jason,
Yes.
just a quick question. Is there any kind of a perception among some of these entities that you've seen anywhere, not just here, but anywhere, of a feeling that they're going to build it whether we help them or not? So why not just let them build it? Is there any of that kind of a perception or a feeling out there?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that's a good observation as well. I've certainly seen that. I don't think Alpine School District is different. I think I've heard that on a number of projects where they've had some belief that, well, development's going to occur anyway. Let's just let it organically occur. Because I think that's part of their feeling, I think that is also an asset to us in our vision, because we could allow it to grow and just develop. And I think it will develop. But I'm convinced that the development pattern and the type of development it would end up looking like is what they're already concerned about. It's the same type of development that they don't have enough tax base to educate their 60 or 70 or 80,000 school day population, you know? And so I think they've got to look outside the box a little bit and say, well, what development really is paying for itself, and how do I get more of that? And I think those are some of the visions that we're coming up with. But certainly, Kevin, I think they've kind of said, well, development's going to happen anyway. Why do we need to do anything with it? So I think that is a factor.
Thank you.
I think we put these things together. I think there needs to be a bit of, I'm sensitive because I don't want this to sound like it's tasting in my mouth right now, but I think there needs to be a greater understanding of what these provide and how there has been a substantial return on every one of these that we have done with the school district for their benefit. I'm worried that, like me, before you kind of become educated on the CRAs, et cetera, and understand what tax increment means. And I'm reluctant to say that everyone is on board with the knowledge of those and how they can be beneficial for all of us. And that is the thing that I know Rob knows, Rob Smith knows. And but I think it would be beneficial as we build this plan. I don't know what Rob Shelton, maybe a lobbying plan. I don't know whether it's necessarily that or not, but along those lines where we kind of have a joint meeting where we're able to talk about that and help them understand that. I think that would change some minds and give a little greater level of understanding. But that's a discussion for another time.
Well, Clark, I think it's a great discussion, and I'll tell you why. I mentioned this to David Bunker the other day, so I'll just mention it again. But this is the same process I went through so we did the Eagle Mountain, we also did the University Mall, but we also have taken Linden, Pleasant Grove, Lehigh, a couple other projects that similarly have basically just stalled. It hasn't been like a no, and it hasn't been like a yes. It's kind of been, well, doesn't meet all of our criteria. Maybe think about it a little bit and then we come back. But the common thread, what I'll say, is that Rob Smith, this is my personal opinion, so take it as that, is very much a gatekeeper for the board. And I think the board likes it that way. I don't think that Rob is out doing it just because he feels he needs to do it or he's taken it upon himself. I think that's a role that the board has maybe asked him to play. So when I say that, I think it's pretty important for board members, the president of the board and board members have the same opportunity to learn about the benefit of these TOD CRAs, because if it just is Rob, I'm concerned that it doesn't ever get to them. I don't think they ever get an opportunity to fully embrace it.
I agree.
And I think Rob already has a bias on it. I don't, I think we've educated him a little bit. I think he started to come around a little bit, but just like Kevin said, I still think there's a little bit of disposition in him of, I don't know that we really need to help them. I think they can accomplish it without our help. So I think it's critical to strategize not just with Rob or staff, but how do we get to the board members? How do we turn their, opinions to the point of supporting these? Because they're really important to the school district.
I agree.
Just a quick question here, Jason, while we're on this TOD/Patriot Station, did I miss that budget in the packet here?
No, it's in the packet. Vendelin, if you could slide forward.
Okay, sorry, I don't have control of the slides, or
I believe, keep going down. So here's our business park. Here's Egg Farm. The thing is, we don't have a CRA for Patriot Station yet. We have a project area plan and a project area proposed budget, but we do not have an established fund. What you're looking at right here are the established funds for each of the existing EDAs or RDAs.
Okay, I just thought that since maybe we had the downtown one that's not also established, that maybe we would have one, and as we're expending money out of it and things of that nature, we've had it tracked in the past. So I don't know if that's included in the tentative budget for approval.
I believe that I'm gonna have to look. I'll find that.
That's the tentative budget, but we can take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think the way I would look at this is you have specific project areas that by statute require this level of accounting and detail as well as budget. So those that have been legally formed in project areas, which have plans, which also have adopted budgets, and also either have a taxing entity committee resolution adopted to spend money, or by virtue of interlocal agreements, they've agreed to pay to the RDA a certain amount of revenue. So for those, you have a very specific, fund dedicated to that. I have seen other RDAs, for instance, Salt Lake City RDA, even when they don't have project areas, they still have certain defined areas where they have set up budgets for. Now their revenues are not tax increment revenues. The revenues are usually appropriation from, other general funds or whatnot, but they have a budget set out of what they're trying to accomplish in those areas. I assume that the RDA Downtown Development Fund is kind of a hybrid of that. I think at one time there existed a downtown RDA. It generated tax increment. It has since come and lived to fruition. It's been completed. But I think on the books, it's still carried because it probably had some fund balances at some time, had some interest earnings. And I think the thought process was, well, we still need to do work in the downtown. And that was part of the Main Street direction that I think the RDA board gave, a few years ago, of not only the Patriot Station, but let's maybe pursue something in Main Street. So that's why, personally, that's why I think the Downtown Redevelopment Fund is still kind of established there, because we did have tax increment, we did have some fund balance, and then we're still studying it, but we don't have currently an active revenue stream. So that would be this new downtown or this new Main Street CDA CRA.
Okay.
The other ones that are mentioned are specific to project areas that have interlocal agreements or tech. So you've got the egg farm economic development area. That's pursuant to that amended plan and budget that we adopted with the taxing entity committee a number of years ago. And so that's the one that's up on the screen. And then I believe there's also the east side. There's an east side RDA project area that is either expired or close to expiring, and what's left are only haircut monies that we were able to capture back because we had qualified recreation projects. I think I mentioned that to the board probably the last November 1st report, as we were just reconciling some of that. When you went out, and I can't remember all of what it encompassed, but it was ball fields, maybe rec center, swimming pool, but they were qualified projects that you did back in early 2000, which if you did, the statute permitted you to capture additional increment for an extended period of time. I believe it was 7 years after its sunset date, to reimburse yourself for certain qualified recreation projects. So what you'll see here is tax increment was one line item, and the last receipt of that was in 17-18 fiscal year. But we get haircut that continues, and we anticipate receiving that even through the current proposed budget. And that tax increment can go to reimburse the city for qualified recreation projects that you've already expended monies on. So as you can see, there's no necessary expenditure for that right now that's built into the budget. Last year, we transferred it to capital projects funds because what happened was general fund monies funded those qualified recreation projects up front. And this 40,000 or so that's coming back really are just reimbursement dollars that then you can use different ways. So I think last year we transferred it to capital projects. Similarly, that's 40,000 that would come in that you could, program. So anyway, that's the East Side Redevelopment Agency. Any questions on the subtlety of tax increment and haircut? I probably didn't do a great job at describing it. It's all incremental revenue. So it's all property taxes, but where you were maybe started at 100% that flowed through the agency and 0% went back to the taxing entities. And then a next period of time, maybe for 5 years, it went to 80-20, went to 75-15. Eventually it got all the way down to about, maybe even a 60-40 split or something like that. What haircut is really everybody but the school district. So we didn't get the option of the school district, but all the other taxing entities for an additional 7 years, 100% of their increment would still come to the agency if you had qualified projects. So hopefully that's a better description. So those really, that 40,000 is part of the city, because it's part of your tax increment, but it's also coming from the county, Central Utah Water Conservancy District, other taxing entities. But it was because you had a qualified recreation project that you constructed.
Okay. And then maybe I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but when we see that beginning fund balance, and this one, there's not a lot that's there. Next year there'll be 51,000 that's in there. But as we look at the projects coming up, maybe if you could address the capital improvement plan versus maybe borrowing from those proceeds to use for other projects and paying it back.
Yeah, that's a good, so from the legal perspective, and let me try to articulate it one more time. Because you expended it up front with other revenues, and we presume for the analysis that we did, we presume that it was general fund monies because it was general fund related improvements, parks, recreation, whatever. Because you funded those already, and you didn't use increment for those. You might have used some increment, but you used general fund monies. The reimbursement of the 52,000 and also the 51,000 of beginning fund balance can really be programmed how you would want. For instance, that prior year you transferred it to capital project, and I assume that's capital projects within the general fund. But it could be used within the RDA. It could be used within RDA project areas. So that money is the balance in that, and the fact that it is haircut monies are probably the most flexible money that you have in the RDA. It doesn't have to be spent within a project area. And this particular fund, really because it was for qualified projects, is really reimbursing other funds that you used in the meantime. So that you could replace those funds and use them for other things.
Okay.
Does that help, Rob?
Yeah, and the one I was probably more question of is the other two funds that we have, where we're getting up into like 1.5 to 2.5 million in the fund balance allocations.
Okay.
I think that's in the egg farm and the business park budgets that we have.
Yeah, and some of those may be a little different, but any other questions on the east side? Now I'll go to the egg farm. I know you.
Thank you. I think if we can help kind of move this along a little bit, I think we might have some other people waiting for us to watch. So yeah, let's move on to the egg farm.
Okay, the egg farm, we've been really successful in the egg farm. A lot more revenue being generated than anticipated. As you know, and I mentioned this at the first, our obligation to BTSAF, we anticipate will be paid in full this next fiscal year, and that will be the last payment. And then there's probably an additional 3 or 4 years of payment that will come to the RDA for projects. So as you know, the fund balance showing up here in the egg farm EDA, probably the same comment, Rob, is, you know, you're going to have a fund balance, plus you'll have some additional tax increment in the future years. I will say at the time we did the amendment to the egg farm, we identified about 7 million of capital projects, and we've only addressed a couple of those just on the surface. So, you know, that's what we've programmed. Didn't have enough time tonight to show you that full detail, but we've programmed the 7 million, and we're only able to get to about, you know, 4 or 5 million of the 7 million. So it's not like we have a lot of extra, but those 9 items that was in the November 1st report that included, you know, Sam White lane widening, you know, a number of those projects would also, you know, be contemplated as part of the fund balance as well as the future tax increment.
Okay.
So that's how that's laid out there right now.
Okay.
So it's a small amount, just to be clear, in 2020 or 21 proposed fiscal year, you know, 291,000 is the payment to the developer. What we're available with is about 175,000 to add to the 3 million or so dollars that's there. Now, you got to recognize we also have some housing funds that are built up in that as well. But there are dollars, but they're pretty well, you know, if we use them all on those 9 priorities, we'll certainly use them all. If there are other priorities other than the 9, or we look at different ones, then, you know, we could have that discussion, but looks like we'll use them all on those 9.
And if we could, Jason, not they have to take time now, but if you could email that out, and I'd hope maybe it has a timetable associated with it so we could see which budget year those projects are slated for. It'd be helpful to know what that 2.5 is. You know, today the inflation numbers came out and there was a pretty good reduction, and there's a worry about maybe deflation. And if we see some reduction in labor costs and material costs, maybe now it's time to take advantage of some of those improvements at a lower cost, or just see what the best use of those funds are that are just sitting there and collecting. So just my thought.
Yeah. No, that's great. What we'll send out as we refine the RDA CFFP, we'll also program, because we'll need to segregate the 20% for affordable housing. So that will be part of the fund balance. And then we do show by year the cash flow of using some of the fund balance along with current year tax increment to sequentially fund those projects. So we start them now and kind of go out through 2025, 2026. And obviously we don't have enough tax increment to meet all of the 9 priorities, but we're meeting quite a few of them.
Okay,
So
thank you.
We'll send that.
You know, and what I would suggest in those, and I would say that there that we remain flexible on what those projects are, that we list them, and that we're aware of them, but know that there's a lot of changing dynamics in that area as well. And so I think an email is great, but let's keep it flexible in the way that this board can look at priorities, what's happening today, and how we might be able to spend them. I just don't want to get too rigid with knowing what we have down there and knowing what's coming and know what comes first or second. I mean, 860 is definitely something that is on the radar right now, but I feel like flexibility is a real tool that we have right now down in that EDA area. So that's just my opinion. I don't know if the other board members have any other input on that, but I would like the city council to be able to look at that and prioritize accordingly, rather than having a rigid schedule.
Yeah, to that point, Mayor, I think our intent was to use the framework, which is what was used in that original amended budget that was shared with the taxing entity committee. So we're not prioritizing it. We're just following that list.
Great.
But I did mention to David that we've got flexibility. You know, that was a anticipated priority list. I don't think we're, you know, absolutely confined to only those projects, but I think we would have to show in good faith that whatever other projects that we substitute them for will provide the same type of benefit to the area that some of these projects are providing. So our intent was to provide that to you so that you could have the high level discussion at a legislative policy level to say, are these our priorities? Do we want to change them? Do we want to modify them? Do we want to add something to them? And then we can help you look through the lens of, is that permitted? You know, are we allowed to do that? Can we, you know, make that work within our current, you know, agreements that we have with the other taxing entities? So it wasn't intended to be firm and fast committed. It was more put it on paper so we can see the cash flow, see what projects you have slated, you know, and this goes back several years ago, but recognizing we've got flexibility to reprogram, put different timing in it and all that.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on RDA, on the egg farm RDA or any of the other RDAs and the tentative budget? We'll revisit this again soon. All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the tentative budget. I don't know if we have a suggested motion that we can look at, or if we can just, if somebody wants to make that motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the RDA tentative budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Okay. Have a motion by Board Member Carroll, second by Board Member Taylor. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Board Member Christiansen.
Aye.
Board Member Shelton.
Aye.
Board Member Barnes.
Aye.
Board Member Carroll.
Aye.
Board Member Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 3 is a review and action on approval of the January 14th, 2020 annual meeting minutes. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Have a motion by Council or Board Member Christiansen.
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Shelton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Council or Board Member Christiansen.
Aye.
Board Member Shelton.
Aye.
Board Member Barnes.
Aye.
Board Member Carroll.
Aye.
Board Member Taylor.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4 is any unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business with the board tonight? Outside of what we've already discussed. All right, new business to come before the board tonight. All right, item number 6 is, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mayor.
I have a motion by Board Member Taylor,
Second.
second by Board Member Christiansen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Jason, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. We'll let you get back to your family and your quarantine status. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's nice to see everyone. Stay safe and healthy, and I hope your sales tax going to jump up.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Running a little behind. If anybody is watching this on YouTube, we just had a building authority and a redevelopment agency meeting, and I apologize for being a little bit late. But we welcome you right now to the American Forks City Council regular session on this May 12th of the year 2020. We are working off an amended agenda. And pursuant to COVID-19 federal guidelines, this meeting will be conducted electronically. You may watch the meeting live streamed at the referred link on this page. You can email public comments to the Zoom public comments, afcity.net prior to 5 p.m. the day of the meeting, and they will be read into the public record by our city recorder. And so thank you for being here. We have an agenda that we would like to follow. It's been posted in various locations, and we feel like it's a good thing to have, so it brings order to our meetings. We will start out by a pledge of allegiance, which I will stand and I will recite. And then we will have a invocation by Councilmember Barnes, after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Councilman Barnes.
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, as we gather this evening as a group of citizens and others from American Fork City, we're grateful for the blessings of life that thou hast bestowed upon us. We acknowledge thy hand in the guidance of this community as well as this country and all of the affairs of thy children here on the earth. We're grateful for the freedoms and the opportunities we have to meet together to discuss government and civic and city business, to discuss and deliberate plans and ideas that will benefit our community. We express gratitude for those who are serving, especially on the front lines at this time, our fire and paramedics, our police, the medical people of our community, and so many others. We're grateful for their service and for the sacrifices that they make. We're grateful for all of the blessings of life that thou hast given us. And we pray as we meet here this evening that we might be able to discuss those items that are on the agenda that will be beneficial to our community. Bless us with wisdom and understanding, please, Father. Help us to make wise decisions that will be for the good of this community, that we might continue to grow and to progress. We're also appreciative of all those who live in this community and the many good works that they are doing during this time of the pandemic. We're grateful for each and every blessing that thou hast given us. We ask that thou will continue to bless and protect those who serve us in any capacity. And there are so many in our local community as well as state and national affairs, for our military personnel and police and fire and so many others who literally place their lives in harm's way to protect us. Bless and protect them and their families. And we thank thee again for the blessings that we enjoy. Pray for the other blessings that thou hast for us that we need. And we do this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you for that prayer, Councilmember Barnes. I will now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Christiansen.
Here.
Councilmember Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Tater.
Here.
Okay. Item number 2, reading of public comment. I'm just going to ask our city recorder, Tara Lynn. Tara Lynn, has there been any submitted public comment for this meeting?
No, there have not.
Okay. Item number 3 is our city administrator's report. Mr. Bunker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just have a couple things to report. We are keeping vigilant track of our COVID-related expenses as a city. We have several, and through the county, through Utah County, excuse me, we will be seeking some reimbursement for those COVID-related expenses as the county has received funding through the state. So we are working on that. It has definitely changed some of the processes and how we do things. The fire department will be conducting some fire hydrant testing throughout the city. They will be testing for fire flow, for pressure. You'll see our fire guys out there. If you see a bunch of water running down the road and a couple guys standing by a fire hydrant, it's not necessarily because it's not working, it's because we're checking to make sure it is working. And so you'll see our great fire department out there making sure that we're being safe and that our system is working well. Tonight, many of you could have heard sirens from the fire department and the police department going throughout the city. There was a parade tonight for a gentleman named Nate Harris, who is a paraplegic who was injured in the war in Afghanistan. And it was his birthday today. So he really wanted to have a great birthday. And so the fire department, police department, and about 35, Mayor, if that's about the number, 35 members of with ATVs and razors. He really enjoyed being outdoors. Now he's confined to a wheelchair, of course, and he wanted everybody to just come by and say hello. It was a great event that the fire department helped organize, and so really appreciate them. It is National Police Week this week, and so I know our police department, they do a fantastic job, and I wish the mayor and council and administration could come by and shake all of your hands and say hello and just give you our heartfelt thanks for what the police department does for our community. We have a fantastic police chief and leadership in our organization, and we just want to say thank you to the police department for all their hard work, and especially right now, it's very difficult during this time to have the connections that we have had for so many years, but we just want the police department to know how much we appreciate them. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Thanks for that report. We'll now move on to the council reports, and we'll begin with Councilmember Christiansen.
I have nothing new as far as committee assignments, but I just wanted to say that as I was reading through the budget for this next year, the tentative budget, I was just reminded of so many accomplishments that each department has done, and just appreciate the employees and everybody who has worked so hard, the volunteers and citizen committee people. There's so much that is taking place in our community that makes it great. And we just appreciate them all for everything that they do.
Thanks for that report, Councilmember Christiansen. Councilmember Shelton.
Thanks, Mayor. The only thing I had to report, we're going to go through it here a little bit later about the dispatch and what we're looking to do to add there. So I'll kind of wait and maybe give a report on that a little bit later on in the meeting if it's appropriate to then. As far as the North Point solid waste, nothing new really to report there at this point in time. So thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Barnes.
Just a quick update on Memorial Day and the program that has been, I was going to say has been put together, but it's in the process under the direction of the mayor and with the help of Camden and David and some others. The program, I'm going to say, has been recorded. They met with police and fire and did a flag ceremony. There'll be some other things that will be added to it. There'll be a couple of brief speakers, and it will all be put together and then posted on all those electronic places. I'm not even going to start to list them because I don't know them all. My understanding is it will be on the city website as well as those others. And the plan right now is to make it available Memorial Day morning at some time so that people can go on and view it when it's convenient for them. And again, in these different times, it's great that some people can think outside the box, use some imagination. I'm a real box guy, and it's all contained in there. So it's hard for me to do that sometimes, but they've done a great job to honor and salute those who deserve our honor and our thanks. And as one that's involved in it, Mayor, thank you very much for your efforts, as well as everybody else that's been involved with it. And I look forward to seeing what it's going to turn out to be like. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Carroll.
Yeah, I actually do have a few things to report on today. Kevin, I'm a little sad that I completely agree with the decision to do it electronically, but I'm sad that we don't get to go to a Memorial Day program this year. That's been a hidden joy that I didn't know really existed in our city that I've been able to go to since I've been on the council.
Well spoken. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to just put out there, and I emailed the council this, but we did have a still days meeting and decided to have still days on the dates that were already previously scheduled. So I think that's July 6th through the 11th. It will be very much a pared back still days. It won't have all the same elements that we've had in the past. And we're still working through which of those events can be done, which can be modified. But we decided that we really wanted our residents to have something to look forward to and to have some sort of summer hurrah. So we're still deciding what that will look like, but it will be forthcoming. And I will try to, because this is so unusual, I'm trying to keep the council updated because I'm sure people will have questions. And that's why I emailed you ahead of time and didn't wait for this meeting to update you. The other thing that I wanted to report was one of my assignments on the Chamber of Commerce is that we had our first electronic executive board meeting. No, excuse me, our first board meeting. Since we've been shut down, they haven't had a board meeting because a lot of their things that they were working on kind of came to a screeching halt. And they had, a lot of the things they do are networking or community building, and they're very much related to gathering. So they kind of had to do an about face. But we were able to have an electronic meeting today, and it was great to hear how different companies were opening up slowly and what they were doing to modify to the new phase of COVID, hoping that we won't have to go back to another one. The chamber president, Josh Walker, did mention that they also have been calling as many as many chamber members as they can, and just kind of seeing how they're doing and seeing if they could get support. And I really hope that the chamber members and other businesses in the city can see how valuable having a chamber is for our city, and just what a source they have been through all of this. And just a little shout out to them as a Chamber of Commerce. That's all I have to report today.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Taylor.
Yes, I have a couple of things. I was just talking last night with my wife about missing the Memorial Day program, how I look forward to that and the Veterans Day program every year. And I certainly appreciate Kevin, the team putting together the digital or the online or virtual, however that will go. It's interesting the perspective we get with this pandemic. And Stacy, I've appreciated the heads up with still days, and I certainly hope, erring on the side of caution, of course, that we can see as much of that as possible. And again, erring on the side of caution. because I think people do look forward to that. I think a good example of that is the golf course, and that's one of my committees that has been continually active even during the pandemic. We have completed the beautiful Bowery, or they have put on the driving range up there, that was funded partially through the park funds. There was also a very generous donor that came forward with $25,000 to be able to donate towards that and have their name put on that. And it's a tremendous asset. But those folks getting out and golfing and taking advantage of being outdoors, I just think has been therapeutic. And the golf course team has been very vigilant in terms of sanitizing and all of the things, even to some serious unpopularity with many because of the steps that they were taking. But that just leads me to believe that, you know, we're coming to a time where still days, as you said, Stacy, give our citizens something to celebrate and to have a bit of an out. I certainly hope that we can see something like that take place, because I believe we need it. That doesn't mean I'm being cavalier about our present situation. I just certainly hope that we can make something happen that way. And so I appreciate all of the efforts towards that, and Kevin, towards you with the Memorial Day program. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
There have been comments that tied into, from both Stacy and Clark, that tied into the golf tournament. Did you see that, Stacy? That the chamber puts on? It's usually held just before Memorial Day. And I think it was just today that I got the notice that that has been postponed until a date in August. So if anybody's listening or was wondering about that, it is postponed. I want to say it's the 14th of August, but don't quote me on it. It's sometime in August, and we'll get that information out. I'm sure somebody will be getting that out in the future, but that's just kind of an FYI that ties into both those. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. You're right. I actually forgot about that they had mentioned that today. So that's a really good catch. I wrote down August 28th for the date that they had changed it to.
As soon as I said the 14th, I knew it was wrong, and I think you are correct. It is the 28th, but I don't have it in front of me.
That was a long discussion with certain members of the board and with Rick. And Rick errs on the side of caution, and there were already several members of the chamber, because it was scheduled to go on. There were several members of the chamber that had called and just heralded his greatness by having that tournament, by willing to have that tournament. And when we talked this week, he says, Clark, I just don't think we can do it. I don't think we can stay within the guidelines we have been given, because we've been so fortunate. And he says, bringing 144 people up here, he says, I just don't think we could do it. And along with the board and him, we made the decision that it would have to be the unpopular decision that would have to be put off, but being safe is critical. So that's what happened. So we appreciate the understanding, and hopefully it will be fantastic in August.
Okay. All right. Thanks for those reports. As far as the mayor's report, it just seems like it's all things COVID. I just feel like it's one call from the next, one Zoom meeting from the net to the next with the Board of Health, all the Utah County mayors. We're trying to develop similar strategies. We're trying to learn what it means in moving from one phase to the next. And so it's an interesting process that we're going through. I'm noticing some cities are maybe doing things a little bit different, but that's okay. We're going to do what's best for American Fork City. And I feel like we've kind of struck a good balance. If the council feels anything different, I'd certainly be open to having you, give me a call. In same respect as Councilmember Taylor says, we just feel like sometimes caution is the word of the day, but we don't want to be overly cautious. And so please give me a call or just arrange a time we can meet. We'll talk. So it was very neat. I'm going to reiterate what David said, and that is that this Nate Harris, this wonderful man at the Heritage Center that was just kind of down, and he said he was in a depressed state. His birthday was today, and they formed a neat thing. We had some emergency personnel, but I think the thing that really caught him by surprise and probably made his day was the 35 plus UTVs that followed, and that was just members of our communities that organized, and they just came right by him and just waved at him and made his day, and it was fun to be a part of that. I had my first virtual wedding that I conducted last Friday. It happened to be my son's wedding, if you didn't see that. And when we went through and we made City Hall available to be for those that maybe would have a wedding or even a funeral type setting, they asked who they were very concerned, and they wanted to know who is the first one on board. And we had a couple cancellations, and then it came up to this was the first one. And I can tell you, I talked to my son last night, and they felt like it was a special, very special circumstance that they were able to wed in. And they felt the presence of the people around them. And so I feel like it was a great thing. And it was a good win for American Fork. We have 4, and I think Camden sent me an email just within the last couple hours that there's now a 5th. And so until we can actually meet in person, we'll just use the simplicity of City Hall and technology to help brighten the lives of people that want to get married. Chick-fil-A last Thursday had the opportunity, at least those employees that wanted to participate, they fed the entire city family, not just the employees, but their spouses and their children. They set up tables out here in the parking lot near City Hall, and then they moved from there to the Public Works building. So, Dusty and Vern and their team, they are wonderful contributors to our city, and they just wanted the entire city staff to know how much they were appreciated. And they made sure that they gave them a sandwich and some other things that went with it. And so I just can't say enough good about Chick-fil-A and what they do for our community. So that is the mayor's report. And we will now move on to the common consent agenda, consisting of 6 items. Tara Lynn, is there any changes to the minutes?
Yes, we did have a couple of changes, so I'm going to read those real quick. On the April 14th minutes on page 8, the paragraph beginning with line 13 will read, Councilmember Carroll stated that if the council knew there was something in the MOU that they disliked, it was wrong to pass it. She added that there were 2 sections, shared parking and reduction of space. She continued that the developers should request a shared parking agreement according to the code. She added that the details of the shared parking agreement were not in the MOU. There's just 1 sentence struck from that paragraph and a couple of additions. Also on page 8, the sentence beginning on line 33 will read, Councilmember Carroll stated that she felt the reduction would be sufficient as it was based on the size. And those are the only corrections.
As you can see, those were my recommendations.
Good catch, Councilmember Carroll.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you very much.
With those corrections, do I have a motion to approve the common consent agenda?
So moved, Mayor.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Carroll. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right. On to the action items. We have ratification of city payments from the date of April 22nd, 2020 to May 5th, 2020. and approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Any questions for the city bills to be paid?
Mayor, I'd move approval of the city bills for payment.
Have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second,
second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Sorry, Mayor, my house is so loud right now. I keep muting myself. So you guys can't hear all of the stomping and screaming,
That's
but
okay. Okay. All right, item number 3. Now, item number 2, review and action on approval of the city's fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 tentative budget. I think we've had an open house, we've had work sessions on this tentative budget. Of course, you know that there'll be some work to be done on fine tuning a lot of it if needed be, but it's just a good framework. And is there any questions that you have for staff concerning our tentative budget?
There was a few questions and maybe suggestions and things that I had on the budget. Didn't know if that's best to bring up in a work session with everybody, or if that's best. Understand this is just tentative, right? I have no problem approving it as is denied, but would love to have further discussion on some of the fine elements that maybe I would like further discussion on. So I don't know if that's going to be coming up in another work session that's slated for next week.
There will be one before we pass the approved, and actually adopt the budget for sure.
If there are any comments or recommendations, I'd be happy to receive them. We are going to have a budget wrap up and review on June 2nd work session.
Okay. So is that the best time to kind of bring, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. It's nothing really about disagreement of numbers that you have, and it's just a matter of priorities and fundings and where that's going to go. So I think that's more of a discussion as a council on that item than anything else. And so that's the most appropriate time at the work session. Does that give us enough time to maybe rework some numbers and things of that nature before the final approval?
Yeah, absolutely. We're expecting to take the final budget on the June 23rd meeting.
Okay.
So that should be plenty of time.
I do have, sorry, this is not about the numbers themselves, but will we be able to get a printed book like we often do, or like we always do? I have such a easier, Kevin has you printed yours?
No, but I
gotten
know people
spoiled.
that can't. I don't have a
I've
color
gotten
printer. I
spoiled
know
when it's
people that can.
When it's such a big document like that and I need to flip back and forth looking at things, it's a little easier if I have it printed. Maybe I'll just talk to you offline.
We can absolutely do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Would
name's
all
Terry
the
Lynn.
council members like a printed copy of the tentative budget?
Yes.
I would.
We'll have one for you next week.
Okay, we'll get them out. I like one as well. I think it's a good document to make notes in the margins for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
We'll get those to you so that you can make your notes, and then when we get together at the work session, then you'll have your printed hard copy as well in front of you. So.
My only comment for right now is one for David and Anna. The OCD kicked in and I got a little overboard on it, found a few little things. There's nothing significant other than maybe the one on the page 1 where it shows the department directors. It's page 1 of the thing. We don't need to look at it now, but I don't think that Timothy Merrill is still our attorney. So just a couple of things like that. The others are more some understanding and discussion of the wording that David and Anna, maybe if I could meet with you two together sometime in the next week or so.
Oh, get
You
that.
scroll
back
down on
there.
that. It's right down there. Yeah.
I did notice, I don't know if I'm OCD too, but the council person really bothered me because we refer to each other as council member. So
I
it's
noticed
so,
that, but I didn't think.
I know,
anything,
so
but-
insignificant.
I guess
So
my question is, Kevin, does the OCD ever kick out?
Oh, come on.
Well, I know I'm just perfectly
it's a legitimate question.
Stacy. Don't try to make this negative.
It's a legitimate question, and sometimes between about 3 and 4 o'clock a.m., it'll kick out.
Okay. Well, I know when to email you then, so we'll see. I'll email you at 2 a.m. All right.
I truly appreciate anyone's comments, and I'm happy for suggestions. It's great to have second pair of eyes for sure. Thank you so much.
Good work on it, by the way. It looks really good, and it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve the tentative budget?
I move to, oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I move to approve the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 tentative budget and set the public hearing for the final fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 budget for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Chris Jansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 3 is a review and action on a resolution approving a seconded amended interlocal agreement with Central Utah 911. Councilmember Shelton, you had a few comments. Maybe you had it for this. Why don't you go ahead and just get us started on it?
Sure. So as you're all aware, PG joined as a contract member, or sorry, Pleasant Grove joined as a contract member of dispatch. And it's actually saving them quite a bit of money to be able to do that. The state is moving towards consolidation of these dispatch agencies to where they're covering larger regions. Every year there's a bill and there's tracking that happens about response times and how you're able to handle the call volumes. And both police and fire chief would be great to answer any of those questions that you guys. As far as this goes, this fully adopts them as a full-fledged member, that they'll have voting authority. And the second part, so there's 2 changes. That's the one, adopting them as a member. And the second one is that in the future, the dispatch agency can adopt and allow anyone in as a full-fledged member without having to go back to the full council. It would just be adopted at the board level. I'm not so sure I'm very supportive of that, just because, and again, our fire and police chief can talk to that, but at some point you want to make sure you maintain your level of service. And that's one thing I've liked as we brought on Juab and Nephi and now Pleasant Grove, is all the cities having a chance to be informed and understand where that level of service is going and how we can try to maintain it as it grows and expands. I think that there's a good possibility that there'll be more agencies that jump on board. I think the only ones that are not, and this is going off memory, in Utah County right now are Orem, Linden, Provo, Springville, and I think Mapleton is part of Springville, if I remember right. So anyway, the hard thing is this is what we have before us to vote on, knowing that consolidation is coming. I don't know if we have much say, but that's just my initial thoughts and feelings on it.
So I actually had the same thought, Rob. I was a little bit raising my eyebrows at the idea of not having it be approved, new additions being approved by the councils. It's a big beast now, but I'm thinking like You know, if I had a smaller interlocal agreement with 3 cities, would I ever allow more cities to come on without the approval of the councils? No, I never would. So this is so big now. I mean, I was hoping maybe we could pass it without that portion of it and just send it back to them. Like you said, maybe it doesn't matter if we're the only city that doesn't do that and all the other cities do. But I agree. I think it's kind of an odd change. Did they have a rationale? Why did
Yeah,
they?
and I can see it. You have a lot of very, very small agencies. Some of them really don't even attend the dispatch meetings. They're, you know, you have, I hate to call anyone out on a public record, but they're just so small. And then you're trying to get all these agencies to do these meetings, to get them to city councils, to get them back in, and everyone has to vote 100%. So they just thought it'd be easier at the board level for a simplicity standpoint of managing it. I mean, I guess I'm really torn on it both ways, just because I can see from the board level at dispatch where they're coming from on this thing and how it benefits them. But at the same time, I see the state coming down and we really don't have much of a choice. I mean, every year it just gets stricter and stricter and we don't have an option to leave. And that's another thing to understand with this. We can never open up our own. You have to have a neighboring dispatch, CPAP, from my understanding, to be able to go next to. So with Pleasant Grove joining and getting rid of theirs, we're pretty much tied in. They were kind of our foot in the back door type of a thing if we ever wanted to escape. But with the state laws, they're not issuing new dispatch agencies. They force you to consolidate. So like I said, I don't know if we have much of a choice or an option. It's kind of a weird dynamic.
You're saying if we don't have a choice to say we approve the interlocal, but not the ability for the board to appoint people to it.
No, I believe the choice is we don't have the ability to do our own dispatch agency.
Correct. Okay.
And
That's
so
why I just
with
wanted
that,
to clarify that.
I mean, we could say, no, we're not joining the agency, but then that's a Sherilyn question, is where does that fall into play? That leaves Pleasant Grove still as a contracted entity, would be my understanding, because we didn't agree to it. And that may add some more political issues to it. So I'm happy to take it back and see if anyone else had any other issues with it. We do have our dispatch meeting this Thursday. I noticed there was only 4 entities that had already met and had signed on to theirs, but whatever we want to do.
And I wouldn't suggest that we send it back with a no. I was thinking we just send it back with a kind of like an addendum or just a modification of their request. Yeah, we'll do it, but strike this part. Or I guess in this case, we're adding back in the part that was deleted.
Yeah, and Sherilyn would be the best one for this. My understanding is then it has to go back to every single city to be approved. Everyone has to approve the exact same document.
That's
So
correct.
if we're in disagreement with other cities that have already passed it, then the amendment doesn't move forward. It's a no. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you're correct. It has to be, the same agreement has to be passed with, each entity has to pass the same exact agreement. So if you pass it tonight with changes, you can do that, but then every other entity has to go back and repass that same thing if they're willing to make those changes as well.
Now, as I debated this back and forth in my mind, the one thing we do have that Kevin pointed out with our first round when we brought on Juab and Nephi is the ability to call for a weighted vote. And that is still the case. This does not address any of the weighted vote. Right now, every board member represents the entity and they just do a vote, but they can call for a weighted vote. And due to your size of the dispatch, that gives you more sway, if you will. So if we had a big issue with bringing on another entity, and again, if you bring on another entity, you'd have to lobby the other groups, but you do have a little more say if you go the weighted vote avenue than just a one vote. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I've
You know-
never seen it done, and I've asked people and I've never heard of it being done that way, but that is written in the bylaws.
You know, I'm kind of the opinion that we all sit on different boards. And in doing such, we kind of know what's going on within those boards. I don't know, you know, I'm talking Fox Hollow, you know, we have a chairman of a board of Fox Hollow. And I feel very comfortable in having him lead out and giving advice and consent to us in the things that might happen and some of the changes. So Rob, I just leave it for me. Of course, I don't have a vote, but I would just really like to hear your opinion as you've debated it back and forth on whether we ought to make those changes, or if you feel comfortable letting that board having some autonomy and actually use what they have, as opposed to having to come back and ask for council supports and go through quite that process. And so you're kind of in that unique position to give counsel.
Well, I think as I stated, my if this was North Point coming back and saying this, I'd definitely be opposed to it. But seeing where this is headed and the consolidation that's out there, almost as if the state each year takes away a little bit of your ability to run your own dispatch with the consolidation and the fines and things of that nature that they're proposing with Senator Harper and others that are out there. Again, either fire chief is able to speak up on that. So the only hope that I have is that we have the weighted average. So at some point in time, I feel like this is the course that's going to happen. It's going to be a big dispatch agency. We'll probably be the biggest in the state by, you know, if we have that full consolidation of Utah County. And I think it's just very, very important that we have to stay vigilant in making sure our level of service does not drop as we bring on these new entities. And that's going to be contingent upon whoever that board member is at in that position. Kind of like we talked about before, where you had 8 towers versus 1, you know, and how that issue took place. So, well, you got any more clarity there, Mayor? But
You know what, I would say, I don't think we have this is the best thing for us as far as 911. I would say, do we want to amend it to give the board autonomy to pick its own board and to have that? So that's kind of where I'm looking at, not the whole thing, but your philosophy and your thoughts on giving that board of autonomy to kind of act and be an agent unto itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't know that was a question there. So again, I feel like I'll probably vote yes on this tonight, just because of those reasons of having that weighted vote average and knowing where the state's headed. But had this been any other interlocal agreement, I don't know if I would go that direction, just because of the direction of where the state's headed.
Okay. Any other questions by the council?
Thank you, Rob, for paying attention and giving us a summary of what's happening here.
Yeah, and you know, PG is going to probably shave approximately 200,000 a year in coming and joining the dispatch. So, you know, we've had a lot of good savings. I want to say it's been great to be part of that dispatch. I think there's going to be some growth pains, and we've probably already felt it. And I appreciate the chiefs being able to bring that up. And I think we do have a pretty good organization. We just got to keep it same level of service. So, Mayor, if there's no other questions, I'll move to adopt the resolution and authorize the mayor to sign the second amended interlocal agreement with Central Utah 911.
I have a motion by Council Member Shelton,
I'll second.
second by Council Member Taylor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Council Member Christie Hansen,
Aye.
Council Member Shelton,
Aye.
Council Member Barnes,
Aye.
Council Member Carroll, Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4 is a review and action on an ordinance amending sections of the American Fork City Code relating to the 620 and the 700 South cross sections. Scott, I'm not seeing you. There you are. There you are. Good to see you. We'll, why don't you get us started on this one?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an item that we have before you. 620 South, this 620/700 is the area that is the southern boundary of the TOD. For a long time, the city's had on its master plan to have a cycle track on that road, but then we didn't have a detail for it. And so what this would do is just create this detail just for that part of that road that would have this cycle track on it. So with that, I've got ready for any questions. Again, that's really the only addition is adding that cycle track.
So what's the east-west? When you say, so it's all south of the freeway then?
From 700.
So the trail itself, this road doesn't go under the freeway, right? It's
No,
okay.
no, it doesn't.
Essentially what would amount to a 12 + 4 + 1 foot travel lane because you have no parking on the road.
Correct.
And then you have a buffer. I'm just wondering if there's some places that we could make it a little bit, there's just a lot of empty space. What's the rationale behind all these different buffers? Maybe we have one too many, is what I'm wondering.
On the shoulders there, the two shoulders? Or
Yeah, because we have a buffer and a shoulder. And that's just a lot of space.
Yeah, the idea is, I mean, really, it's mainly just trying to give that separation between the bicycle traffic and the vehicle traffic. We tried to kind of keep it, as narrow as we could without going too wide. So that's why, it's really a road that's more of a way to get people in and out of the south end of the TOD, more so than the ones in the middle of the TOD.
Absolutely.
So that's why there's no parking on it. I mean, that was kind of the rationale, the thought. Taking kind of what was already there, but adding the cycle track.
Right. I mean, it's okay.
When I say already there, I mean the detailed pre-cycle track.
Okay. Do you have any examples of, it's just like, it's so little, I can't see it. It's just so much space. Normally you would add in parking there, but on this road, probably people aren't going to park anyway because it doesn't have houses on it, right?
I think we're looking to have it be a little bit higher speed limit. It's not I mean, this isn't a raceway, but it's not it's
not a walkable area.
It's not designed for that, but we do still see there being a fair amount of cycles that would be on it.
And the cycle track is raised?
Yes.
Right? It's the same level as the sidewalk.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Seems like we went down this, Stacy, we went down this road when we were talking about Second South and all of the buffers that would go down there. And it was, I mean, I'm with you. It does seem like there's a lot of space with that. But I mean, this is kind of where we landed, at least from what I'm remembering on Second South. We would have those parking spaces, then we'd have the curb and gutter. So I don't know how different it is. That's not answering you any question or bringing you any solace, but I mean, it is kind of in my memory where we landed when we were talking about that on Second South. So I'm with you though. There's a ton.
Well, and you're making a road, and this is a fast road, but you're making a road that, since there's no parking on it and it has a 4-foot shoulder, I mean, I can't do math, 2 + 4 = 6, 16-foot wide lane, basically, because that's where people are going to drive, is a 16-foot wide lane.
It would be, we would definitely have a stripe. That shoulder would have a stripe right there between the travel lane and the shoulder. I mean, yes, they can still drive there, but it's the idea that the travel lane itself is 12 to give them the sense that they're in a little bit narrow space rather than giving them a 16-foot wide unstriped.
Yeah, that is better, obviously. I'm just a real advocate, though, if you don't want people to drive fast, and I don't know what the speed limit of the road is yet, but if you don't want them to drive fast, don't give them a 16-foot travel lane.
Maybe we
just
put
to the-
intermittent tire rippers in that 4-foot shoulder.
It ought to make a difference. What is the purpose of that shoulder?
It just provides that much more separation between there and the curb and gutter. And then of course, 2 feet beyond that curb and gutter is where the bicycles would be. Just give a little more space. Push them a little bit further so the bikes and the vehicles aren't 4 feet apart, they're 8 feet apart.
Hey, Scott, if I recall, one reason we talked about a buffer between the curb and gutter and the bike and the cycle track, it was in the case where someone's parking on the edge of the road and their car door would be open. And
That's what I would assume.
That's true.
Yeah.
but
That's
in
true.
this case, we're not allowing parking on the shoulder. 4 feet's not enough.
No,
If we were going to do parking, that would probably need to be 7 feet. And so I'm wondering if that stripe buffer could be, lessened or moved or.
Done away with, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my recommendation, but I mean, I'm trying not to I'm not an expert here, but that was my thought process exactly. Normally you would have a buffer there because you don't want to swing out a car door and smack a bike. But in this case, there aren't any cars parking on the side and they already have 16 feet to travel in. So
I still like having the bikes be a little bit further from a drop off, because if they're right on that curb, I mean, council, we can do whatever you'd like, but I kind of like having a buffer there so that you really have 5 good usable space. If it's right on it, people are going to avoid, the bikes are going to try to be away from that curb a little bit, just in case they lose control, if they're like me, right?
Well, and I was thinking if we do take 2 feet from somewhere, why don't we take it from the shoulder and still leave the raised curb? Because you're not worried about giving the cars more room. You're worried about giving the bikes more room.
Agreed. If we
And
are taking
so-
2 feet, I'd rather it come from there.
And,
I mean,
and
the
that
thought
would-
was, let's leave this in the same right-of-way width that we have, which is 72. That's what typical, the right-of-way that we have and the right-of-way that we dedicate for this kind of a road. So this is modified. If you want to make it narrower and take narrower shoulders, okay, no objection.
I just worry that you might, with a 4 foot, you might actually entice parking. Someone's gonna be like, oh, I can park my car right there. They're not gonna know that there's a 7 foot required distance, but a car, because you got the curb and gutter there, that gutter is gonna be about another foot approximately, maybe somewhere in there. So you
The
almost
curb and
got,
gutter usually are 2 feet total.
well, I'm talking before the raise goes up. Does that
In
make
the
sense?
pan, just in the pan of the gutter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really kind of shown to scale. They typically are like a foot each. if you
Right,
will.
right. I was just saying you got about 5 feet. Someone's going to go, oh, I could put a car in there. And when I look at some of the skinnier roads, like we've done on 3rd North in places and other places like that, you'll see a car and you'll see the white line striped and they're over on that white line and you kind of got to go around it. And so I wonder if we do anything, making that 2 feet, that would make it really clear that there's no parking there. I'm guessing we'll have signage up and down that, but still
Yeah.
that visual of 2 feet versus 4 may help out.
So I have no objections. Would you want to go ahead and then to keep the right of way width the same? If we narrow up those shoulders, put that same width somewhere else, like another foot or 2 in the park strips or the sidewalks or even the cycle track, just to keep the overall width the same, or are y'all wanting to kind of make the road narrower?
I think adding it to the sidewalk or the cycle track would be fine with me.
I like the idea of adding it to the cycle track. I think if you have that 4-foot shoulder, you're going to encourage or allow or permit cyclists who want to go a different speed to go out onto that shoulder, which is against what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that's where we install those tire thrashing things Clark was talking about again.
Right.
And we all laugh about it, but we know, we know that traffic is an issue. And I mean, I'm not even going to go into this for the sake of time, but I even think of two cycle tracks. Cyclists going at a great speed are not going to go on the ones that we have marked. They're going to be in the road anyway. And unfortunately, the people that are that serious about it are going to go whether that's a 2-foot or whether that's a 4-foot.
That's true.
Unfortunately, just like they're
Well,
never
what
park in the areas that we say they're not supposed to park, they just automatically will.
So I was kind of thinking that, like, I was going to comment that 5 feet, if you're on a bike, you really can't have like 2 people passing,
Oh,
which
no,
is
these
why
are one-way.
they're intending to have it once.
Yeah, these
Yeah,
are
one on
one-way
side.
cycle tracks.
Will they be marked with arrows showing
Yes.
that or
Yes.
anything?
Correct.
Other question I had is, do you paint the curb and gutter? Do you paint that red anymore?
Not typically. It becomes a maintenance nightmare, and so usually we don't. We don't paint red curbs in front of fire hydrants.
I know we don't see them anymore like we used to, but you do anticipate signs put up to show no parking?
Probably, if with a stripe there, I don't know if we would need it necessarily, but
I'd rather see those than the stop signs in my neighborhood.
oh, you like those?
That's an inside joke for those of you that don't know
You
about those.
love
That's-
those stop signs.
That's between Scott and I. But you know what I'm saying.
I do. Quite often we won't really sign a street where it's like obvious like this, where it's a drive lane that is not for anything. I mean, we'd have to look at that. I don't think we really planned on signing it.
I don't know. I just don't want to continue to be the naysayer on this, but on these things. But I think one-way bike paths, I just don't think they're going to work. I know there's these studies, and I'm not against them, and I'm not against the traffic engineers, but we went over this on Second South, and as sure as that is a one-way bike lane, they're going to have equal amount of people going the opposite direction, whether you stripe it or whether you do anything. Just walk our trails as they currently exist, and you'll see that people pay absolutely no attention. And so, I don't know what that means to this tonight, but I think we need to go with a practical approach. And if this is it, Stacy, then we probably have to leave it, because people are going to park if they want to park on the side of that road. And if they have a flat tire, if they have car trouble and need to pull over there, then that's going to be beneficial to have that 5 feet. I don't think having that be 2 feet with the 1-foot curb or the 2-foot curb and gutter and that, I just don't think any of these things are going to make a difference. I wish they would, but I just don't think they are. And so if we're in that 72-foot road width that's like the other ones, then we probably should just say, okay, this is the way we're hoping it goes, and past this. Or I don't know. It's frustrating to me, and I know you all are frustrated with me with this stuff as well, but it just doesn't go that way. People just don't.
They don't.
They're going to be on the sidewalk. They're going to be on that bike strip. They're going to be riding on the grass. They're going to be going back and forth in opposite directions. They're going to be
in the middle of the road.
It's just not going to happen. And if
as if I'm ignoring you, I'm going to ask you another question. I'm not ignoring you. Would it make a difference if the cycle track, both directions were on one? So we kind of consolidated it into one? Or is it just like you're saying, it doesn't make a difference anyway?
I just
Well,
honestly don't think it makes a difference. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing if we have one on either side and go that way, because it's not going to make a difference. And I'm wide open. I'm wide open to have anyone tell me, okay, Clark, shut up. Look, this is where it's happening. But typically, no one can do that. Just like they can't say, yes, this parking plan works.
Okay, I will admit, I have been in big cities that have one-way cycle tracks and people do not go the opposite direction.
Provo's got
And
'em.
You will get run down. In fact, if you step on that cycle track, you will get run down.
Provo's got them. They just recently did at Cougar Boulevard, and those are one way as well.
Did you say Provo then, Scott?
Yeah, Provo along Cougar Boulevard right there, that where they narrowed down and took some drive lanes out. Those are one way.
But folks, I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying people don't abide by that. Maybe in Chicago, Stacy, where, you know, big city mentalities exist, you know.
Sure.
But here we're a little different. I just think we have to embrace the inevitable and move on, or if there's not some better idea, I think 72-foot width is what we have. We have the 4-foot shoulder. Narrowing the shoulder is not going to make any difference to me, and in terms of convincing me that things are going to be different. Man, I sound hard-headed. It's
You know, I wish I could weigh in on this, but I've never strapped it in and went on a bicycle track in my entire life. So I'm listening to this, but I really can't speak from real practical experiences. One that's gone one way, and then come back the other direction. This is kind of down. Well, it is in the sticks now. This won't make it the sticks, but it is somewhat of a buffer between the TOD and another zone. So,
Mayor,
you know,
sorry,
go ahead.
you're not the only one in that condition. I haven't ridden a bike for I don't know how long. My question is, how long of a stretch of road are we talking about here? Just curious.
Oh boy.
You knew that was coming, Scott.
I should have known, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Just a guess. Is it a mile? Is it 2 miles?
It's more than a mile. It's definitely more than a mile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's
we're
worth having a little bit of discussion is what I'm
It's
getting.
the boundary
to.
on the south side of the TOD, but then it does continue to the east for a while.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could just add, I think the thing is 200 South, remember, does have a two-way cycle track in the middle, but it's also significantly wider than this.
Oh, yeah.
So there's room for two-way, and it'll be striped as two-way. 900 South, which is already under construction or built, part of it is, and part of the other ones are already one-way. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, hopefully you'll forgive me saying this, but I think we've kind of collectively as a city already gone down this path of having one-way cycle tracks in the TOD. This is consistent with what's already been approved and some already built.
Well, and my initial criticism really was the extra space in the shoulder, curb and gutter, and striped buffer.
And I have no objection to that. I do really think the one-way cycle tracks are the way to go to be consistent. Narrowing up those shoulders by 2 feet each and then putting that 2 feet somewhere else, I have no concerns with that whatsoever. You know, put it in the park strip would be fine even. Give the trees a little bit more space to let their roots do what they do. I'm totally okay with that.
Well, if the council feels like we need some discussion on this because it is such a big road, we could table it and talk about it in a work session.
I'm ready to go with it as it is. My comment is not that we shouldn't have one-way bike paths. I'm just saying it's not going to make a difference. And so if we have the spacing there, I'm thinking, okay, on this road, we have the 32 feet of travel space, maybe 34 feet if we count the 1 inch, it's not the apron or whatever in the curb and gutter. But if someone does have a breakdown or they do choose to stop there for whatever reason, they have a flat tire, whatever else it is, I'm happier having that space on that travel lane than I am giving a bike more room on the other one. Because anyone who's going to be going at a serious speed is probably not going to be on that little bike strip, even if they're going the right direction. And so I just think the way it's laid out symmetrically, it's going to look nice. For me, I'm good with it going the way it is. But again, I acquiesced back when we were talking about Second South and just kind of was willing to embrace it the way it was. So, Scott, I'm not against one-way bike strips. I just don't think they're for real. So they work like that. Excuse me, they work like that.
I'm gonna, just for fun, I'll forward you unless you want to share screen real quick. I'll forward to you a little news thing on the ones in Provo.
Okay. Forward the one where the article says people are using them properly as well.
Hey, it's got cool video even. And we know that and I know the news never lies.
True.
If there's something on the news, it's true.
So do we need
Of course.
to have a work session about this? Are these changes significant enough that we need to table this and have a work session? As one person, I don't feel like we do.
I'll second that as a non-bike rider. It seems like we spend a lot of time discussing 1 or 2 feet here and there on all these different roads. So I just soon move on.
All right. Well, if you'd like to move on, Councilmember Barnes, I'm open to a motion.
Problem is I'm not smart enough to make the motion.
I'll go ahead and take a whack at it.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance approving section 15.01.1525 relating to the 62700 South cross section.
Okay. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor and a second by Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Nay.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 5 is a review and action on a construction contract for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 pavement rehabilitation project. Again, Scott, I'm going to have you kind of just give us a little synopsis on this, if you would make it brief.
You bet. So, Mr. Mayor, I mean, this is this upcoming years, this fiscal year and a little bit next fiscal year project that would redo these roads. We competitively bid this. Kilgore came in as the low bidder. We reviewed their bid, looked good, confirmed money with David, with Anna, and we're ready to rock and roll on this.
Okay.
When you say redo these roads, are we talking about stripping out everything and going down?
It's
These
a
are not
mix.
these are just not overlays, correct?
It's a mix. A lot of it is a full depth reclamation. Most of it is, but there's a mix of work.
And there is one there on 200 West Pacific Drive to 300 North. That'll probably eliminate half the complaints about the road in this city, that one alone.
You know, picking a road that needs help is like shooting fish in a barrel, but we feel good
With a
about
big
these.
gun, yeah.
These are some good visible ones that will also really help the citizens to see that, hey, you know, we're serious. We're doing some work with the funds that we have.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm actually
be
really
done this
excited
summer?
to see this.
By the end of the so kind of probably some of it will go into fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This year, I should have said, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's always good to see roads being
Mhm.
improved. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yep.
all right. Any other questions for Scott? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll take a shot at the motion, Mr. Mayor. I move that we accept the bid submitted by Kilgore Contracting for construction of the fiscal year 2020 pavement rehabilitation project in the amount of $2,326,256.15. That's real important, the 15 cents, sorry. And approve the construction period as presented. Contract as presented. Sorry.
46, isn't it, Kevin? You said
What's that?
You're right. My OCD kicked in on
Right.
you there, Kevin.
Well, I mean, we're talking a $2.5 million contract and we're worried about 15 cents. Come on.
No, it's the $10.
Yeah, it was $10. Holy cow! I won't sleep tonight.
instead of 246. So
Okay.
I think we've seen that the OCD does in fact kick out.
It's not 3 o'clock in the morning yet.
Okay. All right. I have a motion by Councilmember Barnes. There might be a pizza in there for the contractor, so that's okay. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Second by Councilmember Taylor. Any further discussion?
Just one comment, we never know where the economy is going, but I'm glad to see this came in 8% lower than the engineer bids.
Yeah.
And I would love to see if we can't somehow try to take advantage of the economic situation. It's hard this construction season because we've already got that teed up, but I have heard from various excavators that, they're looking more for city jobs right now because that's the sustainable fruit, if you will. That's what they know is going to be there. So if there's a way we could look at that in our next budget, I think to try and take advantage of that would be key.
Yeah, no doubt that I'm sure that the price of diesel and fuel is a big factor in this. Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 6 is a review and action on the appointment of an interim city treasurer. I can give a little background on this. The current city treasurer has given notice that she will be retiring from American Fork City, and it would be due before our next council meeting. And so we felt like it was good to get somebody in place. We're looking on a new hire, somebody that can take this over as a capacity of a full-time treasurer. And we just need a bridge, just a placeholder to have somebody as a city treasurer. I'm not sure if in the packet, if it stated that individual. Do we know the
No.
individual? Okay, it is
No.
Mr. David Bunker to act as the interim for probably about 2 to 4 weeks.
Just curiosity, how does that work with checks and balances? Can you describe maybe what that treasurer role is? Because that's one we've had issues in the past, and we tried to strengthen those checks and balances that were there.
Yeah, David, why don't you go ahead and take the lead on that, because we talked about this in great length. We felt like that was maybe where David's position was maybe the strongest place to put as that check and balance in the interim. So David, go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I mean, another option would be to have Anna also act as the treasurer. Anna has obviously access to the accounts, but the thought was the person who manages the fund balances, looking at the accounts, that's not me. So, transferring money to the checking account would be a separate duty. And so because I don't do that, then it would make sense that as an interim treasurer that I could perform that. In Cedar Hills, I was the treasurer there as well. It was not the finance director. So we try not to have the person who can move the money also have access to the checks. So that's where we try to separate those duties.
I think the issue came in more with the cash that we had in the past, and that was because the treasurer was responsible for the deposits and where that money is held at and things of that nature. And so, my only worry, and this isn't, just want to make sure we have those right checks and balances. Nothing accusatory of you, David, at all in any way, shape, or form. But if you're the one making the deposits and anyone has a question, but you're the city administrator, how do they go about reporting that, knowing that you're their boss? Do you know what I mean?
I think that would, I don't know that there's going to be an issue there. And Anna, you can chime in if you would like. Yeah, that's not something that, that I'm over every day, managing the accounts and then doing also deposits and checks as well. So there's a separation there.
Yeah.
Is it hard to train someone to do it? I just would hate to give you one more thing to do.
It's not that it's difficult to train someone to do it. We can do that. The issue is finding somebody who has also, everybody's pretty loaded. And so there's not a lot of people that have excess time to do it as well. And because it's interim, our intent is to hire somebody else and then give these duties to them. But,
do we need to have a specific time frame on the motion? Do we need to say 4 to 6 weeks, or do we just let it go like this?
I think it's pending the hire. I mean, we have, we're in that process of reviewing applicants, and then it just depends on who we settle on and their ability to come to the city if they have whatever notice they have to give to a former employer. And so I would say maybe more important than a time frame is based upon the new applicant starting a job. Maybe we could get him here within 3 weeks. Who's to say?
Is this position also going to serve as the current one does as a secretary? To some extent, I don't know how much.
No.
Just
that's another
just pure
hire.
treasurer.
Yeah, that's a different hire actually. We're going to make that a part-time hire.
So
is there that much work for the treasurer to take a full-time position?
No, it'll be an accounting. It'll be an accountant level position within the finance department. So there's definitely going to be enough work there to do.
For a full-time position?
Yeah.
But they would be doing other accounting things also. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe for clarification, David, how much time do you anticipate this being in any given week?
It could take, it depends on what's on the docket, but it's not a tremendous amount of work. I mean, it could be an hour or two a week, maybe. And like we're saying, it's an interim position. I don't see it being too stressful to handle right now. And it will definitely motivate us to hire quickly the right person.
So, Mayor, I will make a motion to approve the appointment of David Bunker as the interim city treasurer.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Carroll. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
I'm going to vote nay on this. And again, it's not capabilities there, David. It's more on the structure and separation of powers. I just have an issue with that structure of how it works. So I'm going to vote no, but it's not in anything about confidence in you and as a person.
okay, Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right. Vote passes 4-1. Item number 7, Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion to
moved.
adjourn.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Carroll.
Mhm.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, George. Thanks, Fendelin. Again, your work is very much appreciated.
Thanks, everybody. Been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
See you next week.
Night.